Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the new Xylella Seminar. Today it's my pleasure to introduce you Viola Di Cori. Viola is working as an economist at the European Commission's Joint Research Center, and she's also a researcher at BeXyl project. Her work focuses on the social and economic dimension of sustainable food systems. So today she's going to talk about the farmer preferences for integrated pest management strategies against Xylella fastidiosa, specifically with the evidence derived from many interviews and studies conducted in Apulia and Alicante. So Viola, thank you for participating in the seminar, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Blanca. And first of all, let me thank you and Anna for the opportunity to present today. I'm going to share my screen and set the presentation mode. Okay. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay, perfect. 1 second. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. Today I'm presenting a study on farmer preferences for integrated pest management strategies against Xylella fastidiosa, evidence from Apulia and Alicante. This is a study in collaboration with my colleagues Jesus Barrero-Urlé and Jose Gomez-Limon. During this seminar, I will first start with an introduction, even though I'm sure that everyone here is familiar with Xylella. But since this video will be recorded, I thought it was good anyway for future generations to have a bit of context in case they are not aware of what Xylella is or Then I will walk you through the study and particularly why it's important to study and to know about farmer preferences. I will explain the study design and the methodology we applied in the study. Some results such as descriptive statistics, the results of the model, and then finally some policy simulation scenarios and conclusions. So first of all, as you may know, Xylella fastidiosa is the Europe's most severe plant pest crisis nowadays, and is one of the most threatening plant pathogens in the world. From an economic perspective, in a scenario full of spread in the European Union, it can affect up to 70% of the olive oil production and up to 13% of the almond trees. The main vector of this bacterium is the spittle bugs. And this is starting, this was seen the first time in Apulia in 2013, and since there it spread in different places across Europe. And for example, in Alicante, which is the other case study I will present today, it started to spread since 2017. In 2020, the European Commission adopted a regulation for the containment of Xylella with some mandatory measures. And in the last years, scientists are developing new solutions to manage Xylella, which I will also explain today. So as I said, from an economic perspective, but also social and environmental, Xylella caused irreversible damage to olive groves and in general the Mediterranean landscape affected, with billions in projected losses across all the regions. These are damages that go beyond agriculture. Indeed, the losses extend to the cultural heritage of the areas involved, the rural livelihoods, ecosystem services, and also the landscape identity, especially in Puglia, where the olive trees is really a symbol of cultural heritage. The action to contain the spread were as well, especially in the first years, where the disease was still not well known and recognized. outside the scientific community at least. The containment mandatory action from the European Commission was compromised. Why? This is because a great variety of stakeholders were affected, not only the farmers, but also the millers, the plant nursery owners, and there was social conflict around the containment efforts that prevent them from taking effect and let Xylella spread. These are some examples of what happened in Apulia, but also in Alicante, of the demonstrations of the civil society against the eradication of the infected plants. So it was, again, also under a social perspective, a very painful moment in the areas affected. So my study here today is, as I said, on farmer preferences for new technologies to control Xylella fastidiosa. The objective of the study is to elicit and quantify those farmer preferences for some integrated pest management strategies. And therefore, the key research question of the study is which are the IPM attributes that farmers value the most, and what is the level of public subsidy needed in order to achieve their adoption. There will be a comparative dimension, of course, because I will have two studies in Apulia and Alicante. So we will also see if preferences differ between the two regions. And of course, this is a study part of the working package of BeXyl on socioeconomic analysis, and is also a study that is part of a more comprehensive project on preferences for new technologies adoptions against Xylella. There is another study in progress with the new early technologies in Andalusia, so still Xylella-free area, and also a study with farmers, with citizens. So preferences of citizens for landscape restoration and control technologies. So why farmer preferences? Why is it important? Because it doesn't matter how promising a new technology can be, farmers need to be willing to adopt it. So the technical effectiveness alone does not guarantee the uptake from a farmer to the technology. Therefore, it's very important to understand which are the drivers and barriers of farmers in order to design more successful IPM policy interventions. And here it where the theoretical framework of behavioral economics kicks in, because behavioral economics studies how the psychological, social, and cognitive factors influence the decision making. And here in particular, it models how farmers for preferences under uncertainties. Just to let you know, this is a study that has been pre-registered in the Open Science Framework platform. Oh, sorry. So yeah, to dive inside the more practical feature of the study, we developed a survey. And we collected primary data in Apulia and Alicante. We collected data with 400 farmers in Apulia and 200 farmers in Alicante. There was a pilot survey to check that the questionnaire was working properly and there were no problems. And the data collection, the final data collection took place between February and May 2026. The survey structure is the following. We collected data on farm characteristics, the Xylella awareness, knowledge, and risk perception of the farmers. Then there is the core part of the survey, which is the choice experiment that I'm gonna explain you in the next slide. And with the choice experiments, we also developed a between subject treatment on consequentiality and on collective adoption. And finally, we also collected sociodemographic. We had some questions as well for quality controls in order to understand yes, the speeders, but also random choosers, people who were making the so-called protest responses, and also people who were always choose the same current situation. The discrete choice experiment, which, as I said, is the main model we use, the main method we use in this study, is a survey-based method that is used to elicit preferences by asking the respondents to choose between hypothetical alternatives. Those alternatives differ in their attributes. So in our case, for example, farmers were faced with different choice cards. Each of these choice cards was presented with 3 different alternatives, A, B, and C. Those alternatives represent active IPM programs, and particularly the first one was focusing on the vector control strategies, the second one on increased plant resistance, and the third one on a combination of both. Moreover, the respondents were also had also the option to opt out, so to choose the status quo, meaning no additional intervention, so no choosing of the new IPM package to control Xylella, but also no subsidies. Inside these 3 different active packages, the following attributes were present. So, as I say, the vector control method, which the different alternatives were the use of fungi on the vector, the use of some specific herbaceous cover plant that were able to either attract or repel the insect vector, and the use of parasitoids to parasitize the eggs of the vector. Regarding the plant material, we find different alternatives such as plant extract, new resistant varieties, and the use of peptides. It's important to say that all these alternatives, they have been developed for real from the other researchers of the project BeXyl. So here what we want to test is, okay, these new technologies, some of them are very promising, they can be very effective in controlling the vector or increasing the plant resistance, but do farmers like them or not? Then together with the different IPM strategies, there will be an attribute on pesticide reduction, so minus 50% or minus 100% of the current mandatory phytosanitary treatment. Then there will be an attribute on minimum adoption threshold. What does it mean? That we say to farmers that in order for some alternatives, some packages to be effective, there will be a minimum collective adoptions from the farmers in the area that need to be implemented. Otherwise, the practice will not be effective. And then we have the subsidies or the payment vehicle. In our case, is subsidies in euros per hectare and year, and it ranges from 25 to 375 euros. This is a practical example of a choice card. So in our questionnaire, each farmer was facing 6 different choice cards, each of them with a different combination of levels. The attribute that I circled in red represent our between subject treatment, meaning that half of the sample was seeing the choice card with the estimated adoption rate, while the other half was not seeing this attribute at all. So we wanted to test whether the collective adoptions was driving preferences of farmers for the different IPM schemes. This model specification, we used a multinomial logit, which is grounded in the random utility theory. We have an observed component V and a random component, unobserved component, which is the error term. And in this model, the error term is under the assumption, the error terms are under the assumption of being identical and independently distributed. So this is the function for the deterministic utility, in which all the different alternatives are taken into account. And then we have the choice probability, which is the ratio of the exponent of one choice on all the other possible choices available. We also include interaction terms. What does it mean? That particularly for the observed component, so all the covariates, meaning the different questions we had in the questionnaire, we wanted to see whether the different answers on the question would have a different effect on farmers' preferences on the three different packages adoption, so A, B, and C, and also on the subsidies. So in the end, we had a set of 11 covariates that we normalized. And last but not least, through this model specification, we can derive the willingness to accept in our case. So the willingness to accept is the negative ratio of the coefficient of those attributes that are not money attributes and the subsidy, so our payment vehicle. So in the end, our willingness to pay, as I said earlier, is expressed in euros per year, per hectare and year equivalent compensation. So these are the first results, the descriptive statistics that can also help us to understand the context of the model results. For example, here, who are our respondents? In Apulia, almost 100% of the respondents was aware about what Xylella is. While in Alicante, only 78% of people were aware of Xylella. In Apulia, we collected data in 4 different provinces, while in Alicante, we collected data in 2 different areas. Let's say we divided it infected or containment area and the disease-free area. Again, here we can notice the production loss due to Xylella, which is much higher in Apulia. Almost half of the sample had losses of over 75% of their production, while, for example, in Alicante, this number is much smaller, and the overall production loss is smaller compared to Apulia. Yeah, mirroring this, also the spending on Xylella measures in Apulia, they are much higher because, yeah, 60% of the sample has spent at least 100 euros and above per hectare on Xylella measures, while in Alicante it's the other way around. So there is 60% of the sample who spend less than 100 euros per hectare. Finally, some information about the perceived risk. So how much farmers feel they are prepared to manage a new Xylella outbreak. And here we can see how in Apulia, farmers feel much more prepared to manage an outbreak compared to Alicante, where still after almost 10 years of the disease being present in the area, they still don't feel so much prepared to manage a new outbreak. These are the results of the multinomial logit in Apulia. So we had 399 respondents for 2,300 395 different choice sets, so the choice cards I was telling you before. And the number of parameters is 54 because this one is the one including already the interaction terms. So as we can see, the 3 different programs are significant and also positive. They have a positive coefficient. What does it mean? It means that they are preferred over the status quo by farmers. And this for us was, let's say, a kind of surprising results in the sense that we were expecting this new program to be, in order for them to have an uptake, that we would require subsidies so that farmers would implement them. But actually here we can see how people like them so much that the willingness to accept is negative. It means that they're even willing to pay to adopt these new practices over the status quo, which I think it's good news for the for the researcher in the BeXyl project who are in charge of these new techniques. What else can we say? For example, the new resistant varieties are as well very much liked by the farmers. And the attribute is significant. As well, the subsidies are positive and significant. It means that anyway, even if farmers do like these new IPM schemes, they are still sensitive to subsidies. So having a positive coefficient means that for them it's still okay. The more, the better. If we go to Alicante, results are more or less the same. So in Alicante, people still like the new proposed packages a lot. The key difference here is that the reduction of pesticides is negative and significant in Alicante, while it was not significant in Apulia. Meaning that farmers in Alicante, they don't like the fact that they need to reduce pesticides. And actually here the willingness to pay is positive. It means that, okay, they are still willing to forgo the use of pesticides, but they need compensation for that. This is the observed heterogeneity, so the interaction terms I was telling you earlier. And here I can report some examples. For example, the consequentiality belief, what does it mean? So we asked the farmers, do you think that the choices you make today in this survey will affect real policy decisions in the future? And here we can see a strong positive correlation, meaning that farmers who strongly believe their choices would make a difference, they also liked, they chose the IPM schemes more. Another interesting one is the preparedness, so how much farmers felt prepared to manage the new Xylella outbreak, and here the results are negative, meaning that the more the farmers feel that they are already prepared to manage a new outbreak, the less they would choose the new IPM schemes. So they feel already confident that in the current situation, they would be perfectly able to manage a new outbreak and that they don't need anything more. The intensive farming is a result which was significant in Apulia, but not in Alicante. It means that farmers who have an intensive farming method were less likely to prefer the new IPM schemes compared to farmers who are not who do not have an intensive production. So as I was telling you before, we had this between subject treatment in which one portion of the sample was seeing this minimum threshold adoption for the effective control. So we wanted also to test if this attribute made a difference. what we can see from here is that even though the attribute itself is not significant, the coefficient of the subsidies in the people who saw the adoption attribute is much higher. It's almost double as the ones who didn't see it. And as you can see also from the willingness to accept, the farmers who have the adoption threshold attribute are willing to accept less, are willing to forgo less money compared to the ones who did not see this attribute. So the meaning is that, yeah, since the collective adoption means that farmers, they all have to adopt, they all have to trust that their neighborhood will also adopt and will behave in the adoption of the package. They want more compensation, or at least they're willing to pay less in order to adopt the new IPM schemes. In Alicante, we see the same effect, even though it's a bit less. It's not as big as the one in Apulia, but more or less the results are the same. And finally, we decided to run some policy scenario simulations to see if specific packages of like a specific IPM package to what share of farmers would have been adopted. So we used a binary participation rate, meaning, okay, if this specific program would be the only one offered to farmers, what fraction would participate? So first of all, this is just an example. We used the subsidy gradient, so keeping fixed pesticide reduction of minus 50% and adoption threshold of 75%, which share of respondents would adopt the different packages. And here some conclusion we can draw is that, yeah, farmers are sensitive to subsidies, but in Alicante, they are much more sensitive to subsidies rather than in Apulia. Because, for example, if we take the package C, that was the combined one with the vector control and plant resistance, we can see how at 0 subsidies, in Apulia, 77% it's still willing to adopt it against the 70% in Alicante. But then if we go to the maximum subsidies possible, so the 375 euros, we can see how in Alicante the share of farmers willing to adopt now is even higher than in Apulia. And finally, we did some also practical policy packages. So a full fixed package. Here we did some example, but of course this can be done with whatever combination of alternatives. And just to give you an example, if we would propose to farmers a package in which with the use of fungi plus the resistant varieties with a pesticide reduction of 50%, a threshold of minimum adoption of 50%, with the maximum subsidies of 375 per hectare, 80% of the farmers would adopt them. And of course, we did the same also for Alicante. These are the same packages. And here again, once again, we can see how farmers in Alicante are more sensitive to subsidies compared to Apulia. Of course, this study comes with some limitations. The first one I would mention is the hypothetical bias of discrete choice experiments, because the choice experiment elicits stated preferences, meaning that the actual adoption behavior may differ from the expressed willingness to accept the subsidies, because it's still respondent realize that is still a theoretical exercise that will not have to receive or give money on the spot. So this can alter the results. The sample size of Alicante was not small, but for sure, yes, it's half of the size of the one in Apulia. So the statistical power, of course, is lower, and this can limit the precision of especially the split sample estimates. Finally, the multinomial logic assumptions, especially the ones that I told you on the independent distribution of errors, it is indeed a strong assumptions. But I also want to say that we try to run very many different models, also including a mixed logit model that relaxes this assumption. But in the end, the multinomial logit with interaction was the preferred model. The quality flags we found were rather high, because like almost 50% of the sample in Apulia and 40% in Alicante had at least one of the among the speeders and the random chooser, the share was not so high. What was very high was the number of attributes, so-called attribute non-attendance. So these protest voters that I told you earlier. But here is rather normal for in environmental studies like this to have very different preferences and opinions from respondents. So I would not say that this is an alarming results. And finally, of course, in the policy simulation scenarios, the future real-world adoption may differ from the predicted adoption. So the external validity in this case is not very high. And this will be my last slide. So key takeaways. We found a strong preference for active IPM programs, both in Apulia and Alicante, especially in the combined strategies. So combining the vector control and the plant resistance. The most likable alternative was the resistant plant varieties, which is consistently preferred in both regions. In Alicante, farmers are more sensitive to subsidies, and in both regions, farmers need more subsidies to accept the adoption thresholds. Finally, the pesticide reduction matters more in Alicante. As we saw, it was significant and negative, only there and not in Apulia. And this is a key regional divergence. So this is all from my side. Thank you very much for listening to this seminar, and I'm open for questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Viola. Any question?